Hello, my fellow chefs. Today we talk steak au poivre and professionalism in the kitchen again. I am Mark Grigsby, your chef and guide through this experience, and this is the IncrEDIBLE Discourse. Hello and welcome. I am Mark Grigsby, and again, you found me here at the IncrEDIBLE Discourse. I'm sure you noticed that in my opening today, I mentioned professionalism again, with air quotes. And I wanted to kind of touch on this again because I feel like there were a few things that I didn't say or elaborate on because the show started getting super long. I also mentioned last week that I thought that maybe another episode that just highlighted professionalism may be necessary, and the more I thought about it all week, the more I felt compelled to do it. So, this week, I chose a shorter recipe that is amazing and relatively easy to make. If you like beef, this one's right up your alley. It's a classic staple in French cuisine, the steak au poivre avec frites, or pepper steak with French fries. And no, not the pepper steak at the fucking Chinese restaurant. This is a pepper-crusted steak, like, in a fucking French restaurant. Anyhow, I like this recipe because it is truly a timeless classic. The use of peppercorns to season meals was popular in European cooking as far back as the Middle Ages when pepper was valuable and considered an exotic spice. And this dish itself has been around since the 19th century and was considered a luxury due to the use of tender cuts of beef. By the 20th century, this dish was a staple in French cuisine and featured in France in many restaurants and bistros. I like the tangy and silkiness of the sauce, and I am a beef lover by nature, so this one's one of my all-time favorites. This can be a steak night dish at your house, or it can be an elegant, high-priced dish at your restaurant. I like to use the peppercorn melange in this dish because I think the different peppercorns give different flavor profiles and make the dish a little bit more interesting. This is a common ingredient, but if you can't find it, using black peppercorns will do just fine. I also add the mustard as a twist to add a little bit of complexity to the sauce. Mustard and beef go well together, and this addition complements the richness of the cream and the sharpness of the brandy. I use brine green peppercorns in the sauce, and I like this because it's another layer of flavor on top of everything going on in this brandy cream sauce. The brining makes the peppercorn not as abrasive and also makes them slightly softer, giving a better experience for the palate. I've been making this dish since I worked fine dining in the Florida Keys over a decade ago. Remember a couple of episodes ago I told you a story about a chef from Atlanta who didn't like me and told me he was going to make me quit? Well, this is the asshole who taught me how to make this dish originally. And since then, going through many other restaurants that serve this same dish, I have seen a few different interpretations and even served it in my own restaurants many, many times. It's rich, it's tangy and beefy, and can be made in just about any setting you can think of. So let's get it ready. We're fucking shit up today. And on a side note, I am also giving my home cooks the night off. I don't have an advice topic for you all today because I really wanted to dive into this professionalism thing. I really think that there needs to be some attention given to the subject. This generation should hear it from someone close to their age and someone who has to remind these old dogs of the good old days when we used to enjoy what we were doing and did it with some respect and dignity. But anyway, first, let's eat. All right, so let's go over the equipment you will need to pull this one off. To start, we're going to need a plastic zip bag, and I prefer a freezer bag rather than a storage bag because they're a little bit thicker. We're going to use this bag to bust peppercorns, so you will need something that can resist the pounding. That leads me to my next piece of equipment, a mallet. We're going to use this as an instrument to crush these peppercorns. Once you get these things crushed, we will need a plate to put them on so that we can crust our steaks evenly. We're going to need a skillet to sear the steaks, and cast iron works really well here, but if you don't have cast iron, stainless steel will work just as well. Lastly, you'll need measuring equipment, spoons and cups, a set of tongs, a larger chef spoon, and a deep fryer for the fries. If you're at home and you don't have a deep fryer, an air fryer works well here, an oven. We're making French fries here, guys. Now, if you like your meat done a little bit more than medium rare, you should have an aluminum-lined sheet pan. I like mine on the rarer side, and so that's how this recipe will play out. When we get that far, I'll let you know. If you're not cooking on propane today, you'll need a lighter. We will be using a technique called flambe today, where we will be igniting the brandy to burn the alcohol off. And that's it. Relatively simple items that most household kitchens have on hand and things that are very, very common in professional kitchens. But if they're not so common in your kitchen, I will set some links up in the description of some things that'll work here. As always, Jeff Bezos and Amazon have all of this shit on their website, and he'll even bring it to you. All right, let's talk ingredients. As usual, let's start with the obvious, the steak. Today I will be using filet mignon or tenderloin, but you can use almost any cut of beef for this recipe depending on your taste or budget. This dish works really well with strip steak, ribeye, and sirloin. It's really up to you. Now, we need to get into the spice cabinet and grab just two things, kosher salt and peppercorn melange. As I said earlier, if you don't have or cannot get melange, black peppercorns work fine here. I'm going to use clarified butter to sear the steak. I like the flavor element that it provides, but you don't have to use this. Olive oil, canola oil, or whatever fucking oil you prefer works just the same and does the same purpose here. Whatever you do, do not use whole butter to sear the steak. Clarified butter is whole butter that has been separated from its milk-based component. Using whole butter would be a bad choice as the milk solids would burn in the high heat we'll be using to sear the meat, resulting in a bitter flavor and a black color. Now you're going to need about 4 tablespoons of whole butter on the back end of this so that you can butter baste this steak. Now for the sauce, we're going to need 1 shallot minced, 2 garlic cloves microplaned, a half cup of brandy, a half cup of veal or beef stock, 1 cup of heavy cream, 2 tablespoons of green peppercorns in brine, and a teaspoon of smooth Dijon mustard. This is the second week in a row, guys, that I listed all the measurements for the ingredients. You're fucking welcome. To garnish, I want to break out the microgreens, arugula, and radish. But if you don't have this on hand, a little bit of chopped parsley will do just fine. Ready to cook? Let's get in it. All right, so before I can get anything on the heat, I have to get our key ingredient together first, the peppercorns. I'm going to take my peppercorn melange and I'm going to add it into the zip bag. Then I'm going to take my mallet and I'm going to go to town on this shit. I don't want to go nuts, because I'll risk hitting it so hard I'll fuck up the bag and then everything falls out. But you do need to hit it with more than just a tap to bust these things down. Now, you don't want to crush these things too finely. The object is to crush them and leave them somewhat coarse. Now, I'm going to crust this steak, but before I do, I'm going to pat dry the steaks with a paper towel and make sure they're as dry as possible. This is going to help get a nice and even sear, as well as help the peppercorns stick to the meat. I'm going to generously season the steak with kosher salt. Now I take the steak and I put it salt side down first onto my plate with the peppercorns and gently press the backside of the meat into the peppercorn. Again, with the kosher salt, I'm going to generously season the uncrusted side. And now we're ready to make the magic. Heat the skillet on high heat. The pan has to be really hot to sear the meat, almost 400 degrees. Now I add my clarified butter, I tilt my skillet and swirl it around so that the pan gets coated, and then I drop my steak peppercorn crust side up. Usually I would tell you to sear the crust side down, but in this case, I want to make sure that I get a really nice sear on the bottom side. You're looking for a really good browning or Maillard reaction. The Maillard reaction is a chemical reaction between amino acids and the reducing sugars that occurs when food is cooked at high temperatures, typically above 300 degrees. It is responsible for the browning of food and contributes to the development of complex flavors and aromas. This process is going to take about 1 to 2 minutes, and then I'm going to flip this sucker over to the crusted side. After about 15 to 20 seconds on that side, I'm going to add the whole butter. Taking the chef's spoon, I'm going to tilt the pan towards me, and I'm going to begin to spoon this melted butter over the top of the meat. This process is called butter basting. This technique adds flavor and moisture and also helps to prevent the food from drying out. You see this done all the time on those competitive TV shows, and this is the reason. I'm going to repeat this spooning process several times while the crust is searing on the bottom of the skillet. Afterward, I will turn the steak on its side and sear all of the sides ever so slightly, about 20 to 30 seconds per side. I want to lock in the juices and the flavors, but I also don't want to hammer the steak. I want it to be nice and medium rare. Now I'm going to take the meat out of the pan, and rest it. Very important step. At this point, if your preference is for the meat to be more well done, you should pop it into an oven about 350 degrees for about 3 or 4 minutes. That should take it to about medium. Now, if you like your steak more well done than that, you're a fucking criminal. Don't use my recipe and fuck up a steak like that. It's a crime, and I will not aid you in doing such a thing. Now, while the meat is resting, we're going to make the sauce. In the same skillet, I'm going to add the shallot and reduce the heat to about medium. I'm going to cook the shallots for about 45 seconds and then add the garlic and stir. Now, because I microflamed the garlic, this shit will burn faster, so you have to watch it and pay attention. It would be a shame for us to come all this way and fuck up now, so pay attention to what's happening in the pan. Now I'm going to add the brandy to the pan to deglaze. We all remember what deglazing is, right? If you don't, go back and listen to my episode where we talk about this at length. Now, here is an important note. If you're cooking on propane, you want to remove the pan from the heat before adding the brandy. If you don't, this will go poof and it will scare you. I have seen this many times. Do it off the heat and then bring back to the heat and tip it slowly to ignite. You want to ignite this because you want the alcohol in the brandy to burn off. Now, if you're not cooking with propane or in the open flame at all, you're still going to ignite this, and you will do this by adding brandy and using a simple lighter. The brandy will ignite quickly and probably burn for about 30 seconds. Once the flame show is over, the alcohol is out and we're ready to proceed. Now I'm going to add the stock, the cream, the mustard, the green peppercorns, and a pinch of salt. I'm going to mix this a little bit, and then I'm going to bring it to a simmer. I'm going to reduce this for about 3 or 4 minutes until it seizes into a nice thick and creamy sauce. While this is happening, I'm going to drop my fries into the grease and fry until golden and crispy. When they're finished, I'm going to toss them in salt, and now I'm ready to plate this shit and eat. If you're at home, you can plate this as simply as spooning the sauce over the top of the steak and serve with fries on the side. Or you can plate the fries under the steak if you want to be fancy. But if you're at a restaurant, I would have also tossed the fries in a little chopped parsley and a little grated pecorino cheese or something similar and put them on the side of a nice round plate. Then I take the sauce and I spoon a generous but not obnoxious amount opposite of the fries. Then I place the steak on top of the sauce and garnish with the microgreens. It's important to note that I did not pour the sauce on top of the steak here. I wanted to showcase the steak and the beautiful crust that I built. I chose the micro arugula and radish because I like the spiciness they bring, and the color is really nice and bright on the plate, which accents the dish. And that's it. We made steak au poivre with French fries, or steak au poivre avec frites. It's delicious, beautiful, and really not that difficult to make. Let me know how this recipe turned out for you. I'm always interested in your results and journeys. You can always visit theincrediblediscourse.com 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Send me some pictures of your work and let me know how you did, or if you need some additional tips or advice, you can always reach out to us and we'll help you out free of charge. The goal here is to help mentor and help aspiring cooks and chefs reach their goals and dreams. Anyway, now it's time for Food for Thought, or what I like to call Pro Tips from a Chef's Lips. Now, I said earlier in the show that I would be giving my home cooks the night off after the recipe, and here we are. Clock out, home chefs. Thank you for all that you do. I appreciate you. We'll see you next week. I really wanted to expand the thoughts on professionalism in the professional kitchen with cooks and chefs of all walks. This advice applies to all those who are just starting out in their careers and need a few really good guidelines that will get them on the right track early in the game, or to those seasoned vets in the kitchen who may have lost their way a little bit and need a reminder that working in a professional kitchen goes beyond just cooking food. I think cooking food and cooking great food is a huge part of what we do. But if you lack the professionalism and respect for the industry, your cooking becomes an afterthought. So last episode, I talked about professionalism possibly being the difference between you landing or keeping a job or not, and I really wanted to reiterate just how important of a statement that really is. To sum up the importance, I'll say this. Your chef would much rather work with someone with a smaller skill set but a much better attitude than someone who knows how to execute everything but is a complete asshole and drags everyone and everything down all the time. Now, I understand all that goes on into running a professional kitchen of all degrees, right? And I know the pressure the team and chef feel when trying to put out great food fast and how that can cause tense situations. But that isn't what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about tense situations. I'm talking about the guy who is unwilling to help the next man out. The guy who purposely seems to sabotage the team or chef at every chance they get. The guy who is always late and always has an excuse why. Or the guy who calls out once a week the night after they went out drinking with a coworker. Or the guy who comes in with a chef coat that is so completely fucked and smells and doesn't have an apron to work with. These people are everywhere. And really, it takes just one of them to create an uncomfortable environment for the other chefs and cooks to work in. If you're that guy, please listen to today's Jeremiah and make the change. Get better. Give a shit about what you're doing. So after I finished last week's episode, I felt like there were things that I left out that I just couldn't ignore and needed to be said. And the more I thought about it throughout the week, the more it bothered me. It bothered me because I remembered a few things that I felt were crucial in this conversation. Last time, I spoke about calling out and noted that shit happens and that your chef understands all the way up until the point where they don't anymore. And one of the quickest ways to get the chef to that point would be calling out because you're too hungover to come to work. This happens a lot in this industry. And let me tell you, this industry is full of vices and temptations. And honestly, I haven't met a kitchen worker in my career that does not have some kind of weakness. From drinking, to smoking, to drugs, to gambling, to women, etc., they all have one, or more in some cases. And they have one because of the high-stress environment we work in. Everyone needs something to de-stress themselves, and each to his own here. But I have religiously told my staff to try their best to make conscious efforts to make good decisions that won't fuck up their job or their way of making money. Don't go out and get so banged up that you're sick as a dog the next morning and cannot physically come to work. I'm not saying you can't go out for a drink after work or party with your friends or co-workers. What I am saying is, whatever you do, make sure you get to work the next day. The reality is your body needs rest after getting your ass kicked on the line all night during a busy service and staying out till 3 or 4 a.m. and then trying to make the opening 9 a.m. shift and double will be nearly impossible. And even if you do make it, your quality of work will be affected. You won't be as sharp because you're tired and you're likely an irritable pain in the ass to work with. And be kind to your body, chefs. You'll thank me later as you get older. And if you're old already, take your old ass to bed. You already know you need it. The work all day and party all night lifestyle isn't sustainable for anybody. And if you're going to leave a job, it's completely understandable. Different opportunities come up, or maybe you're just not happy working in this kitchen anymore. And that's okay. But the most professional thing to do in this situation is to put in a notice. Don't just stop showing up. Don't burn the bridge. You want to be able to add this job to your resume so when your next opportunity arises, you can use them as a reference for your work. Putting in your notice shows professionalism and respect for your employer. You never know when you may cross paths again with the owner or a chef, and you don't want them to bring up the time that you bailed. And remember, the cooking world and industry is big, and we all know each other in some capacity, and we all talk. Here's a good story as an example. A while back, I worked at this restaurant that had 2 sous chefs when I started. Both nice guys and both professional. But one of them had a lot to learn skill-wise. Eventually, I got promoted to chef de cuisine in this place and became his boss. He eventually gave his 2 weeks' notice on paper and left and moved out of state and continued working on in the industry. Fast forward to 2024, just a few weeks ago, actually. He applied at one of my close friends' restaurants in downtown Miami and listed the place that we worked at together on his resume. My friend notices this, calls me up immediately, and didn't even ask me what I thought of him. He didn't ask me what skills he knows. He didn't ask me if he's competent. He asked me flat out if I should hire this person. It was a direct question that was asked because of the rapport and trust that I have with my friend. He didn't have to ask about the applicant's background or experience. He just needed to know if I myself would hire him. Luckily, I'm a fair-minded person and green-lighted the hire. But had this applicant burned me once upon a time ago when we worked together, I probably would have shut it down and told him I didn't think it was a good idea. Now he's working for my good friend and making great money and is in an amazing situation. Don't ever discount what professionalism can do for you and your career, chefs. It may not seem like it now, but you never know who knows who and where it one day would lead you. Another point that I came across in my mind when reflecting on last week's episode was having too much pride at the wrong time. There's nothing wrong with having pride until you're too proud to ask for help. There's nothing wrong with asking for help, especially when you have a lot to do and you're backed up and there are people around you who are less busy and could lend a hand. Know when you have too much to handle and communicate. Now, don't be that guy who asks for help and then disappears. That would be definitely fucking abusing it. Even as a chef with years of experience, I still ask for help. I have always said kitchens are a team sport. It takes the effort of the entire team to have a consistent and efficient kitchen that ensures customer satisfaction. Help each other because the team is only as strong as its weakest link. Communication is vital to a kitchen success. In my last example, communicating when you need help is just one of the many things that need to be communicated. Talking about key points in service like specials, the touch points of the dishes, the team and their positions, courses, parties, events, all of these things are necessary for the kitchen to operate at a high level. If no one knows what the fuck is going on because there's a failure to communicate, how can we please the guest who has the expectation of excellence when they dine in our establishments? The last thing I want to talk about today is respect. I saved this for last on purpose because I think it is the core and basis of professionalism. Respecting each other, your chef, the restaurant, and what we do is such a big part of being a culinary professional. Being respectful builds teamwork and efficiency because you have to rely on each other to get the job done. Having a positive environment and clear communication helps get tasks executed faster and more accurately because everyone is working towards the same goal. Being respectful also can contribute to the overall safety in the kitchen. Disrespect can lead to distractions, miscommunication, and mistakes, which can increase the chances of accidents or injuries. Be careful and don't fuck around. Respect the craft, and people are less likely to get injured. Kitchens are naturally high-stress environments, and being disrespectful can cause a lot of unnecessary stress and reduce morale. Being respectful helps manage stress and promotes focus, and when there is more focus, learning and growth is fostered. The team is more willing to help each other, share their knowledge, provide feedback, and support each other. And when there is more growth and learning, the quality of work ends up being higher just by fucking nature. Everyone is striving for excellence and are less likely to put out subpar dishes because they give a shit about what's happening around them. Maintaining professionalism builds a good reputation for yourself, and you will be more likely to achieve advancement or find better opportunities simply because you are a respectful person. It's crazy how close in connection these two terms are and how far they really could get you in your culinary career. The most efficient kitchens and kitchens that perform at the highest levels are those that are respectful and promote growth and learning. You're not there to pick on the guy who doesn't know enough, and you're not there just to get a check. You should be there because you give a shit about your work and what that contributes to the overall success of the restaurant that you're working at. Anyhow, rant over. I felt like I got super excited there, but I hope I made my point. And I hope that you tried the steak au poivre recipe and learned a lot about being professional in the kitchen today. I'm sure there is a lot more detail I could go into about it, but I think I touched all the bases really well over these last 2 episodes. It's not an exact map of what to do, but it's sort of a list of things to keep in mind when you're working in a professional kitchen. Just remember this. You get what you put into it. If you work hard, be respectful, and try your best, it won't go unnoticed and you could get that promotion or opportunity. But if you're an asshole, you're likely to be cooking on the line in various places doing the same thing for 30 years and never get to be the chef. And that's even if you last in the industry that long. Keep growing, chefs. Keep learning. Keep eating. And get out there and make a fucking difference. 1% better than yesterday. Every day, guys. And if you like what you heard today, leave me 5 stars on Spotify or a great review wherever you're listening to this. And make sure you visit us at theincrediblediscourse.com and all of our socials now that they're finally up. I appreciate your time as always. I'm Mark Grigsby. You've just been put through the Incredible Discourse. Until next time, play my theme music.